Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be ranking all of the bronzers that I tried in 2024. So I tried 13 different bronzers in 2024, and this video was originally supposed to be part of my year-end ranking series back in December, but I stretched myself way too thin in December and ran out of time. So we will be ranking all 13 of these bronzers. I will also pop up swatches of each one. So this ranking is of course based off my own preferences, and I do have very fair skin, so the things that I'm looking for in a bronzer, I want something that is either a little bit cool leaning or neutral. I don't like anything that pulls too orange. I don't want a glittery bronzer, and I do prefer something that is a little bit more buildable just because I am very fair, so it takes nothing for something to be way too pigmented on me, and then that correction is just too much work. So I like things that are very effortless, very easy to work with, and of course have the right tone. So all of those things are of course factored into this ranking. So coming in at number 13, and my least favorite bronzer of the year, is one of the most expensive. This is the Armani Luminous Silk Bronzing Powder. I have mine in shade 90. So this is the lightest shade. I don't think they had a very good shade range. I think they came out with 4 shades. This is a massive bronzer. I love the packaging. I think it's really, really lovely. You do get a nice big mirror in here as well. And this bronzer is just not my favorite. I really tried to like it. I do have a dedicated review of this one. So first off, there is a fragrance to it. It's not offensive, but it is definitely there. I do have some bronzers here that definitely do have a stronger fragrance, but that is just something I want to mention. My main issues with this are that it is essentially orange. It is a very, very warm tone bronzer, which I just don't prefer. And this also is glittery, and I don't really understand why. I don't want glitter particles in my bronzer, so I don't really know why they would be in here. I even thought that perhaps this was perhaps an overspray, and once I got past that, I would lose the glitters, but no, the glitters go deep. They are in there because I used this bronzer several times trying to make it work, trying to see how I can use it in a way that I like it. This is something I only like on the eyes, and if I want something for my eyes, I'm probably going to reach for my eyeshadows. So I just really didn't love this. I really, really tried, but it's just too orange. It's glittery. That's none of the things that I'm going for in a bronzer. Coming in at number 12 is from Ilia, and this is the Sunshift Cream Bronzer in the shade Eclipse. So I actually toyed with whether this one or the Armani should go in the very bottom slot. So I really wasn't sure which one of these should be at number 13. Honestly, I think they're interchangeable. So this is a cream bronzer, and the packaging is definitely just a very basic plastic component. There's nothing special about it. You do get a mirror, of course, and this is a cream bronzer. Now, I was really excited about this because I do love a good cream bronzer. Some of my absolute favorite bronzers are creams. The Charlotte Tilbury cream bronzer, the NARS cream bronzer, the Saie cream bronzer, all absolute favorites, and they have been for years at this point. So when applying this one, it is definitely not orange. So I think that is why I ranked it a little bit higher than the Armani. But it does end up having this sort of weird red tint. Now, I like bronzers that do have a rosier or more reddish undertone to them, but this just kind of almost looks red, and not in a flattering way. It kind of almost makes my skin look irritated. And then there's almost a metallic shift to it, which you can see from the swatch. I just really did not like this. I didn't really hear anybody talk about this, but I just really didn't like this product. I thought perhaps this might be good for maybe the bronzing technique because it does have that reddish tone to it. But again, it wasn't a flattering red tone on me. It just kind of gave that redness that made my skin look irritated rather than bronzed. So I did not love that. And then it had that weird metallic shift to it. It took a lot of work to blend this out in a way that made it wearable. So I really did not like this. I don't think they even came out with a very good shade range. And to have the lightest shade be this strange, I do not understand this. I think if they called this a bronzer, I would understand it more, but in no way do I like this as a bronzer. I was really excited for this and I was really let down. Coming in at number 11 is from Makeup by Mario, and this is the Soft Sculpt Bronzing and Shaping Serum. So this is not a bad product. So starting from this point on, we don't have any bad products in this ranking. So this one is unique. This is the first liquid bronzer that we have. I don't typically go for a lot of liquid bronzers, but this one has a pump, but it also has a doe foot. So there are two different ways that you can apply this product. And I think that's amazing, especially for those who are makeup artists, because that definitely helps keep things very clean and sanitary. And also, it's also just really, really nice if you don't like using a doe foot for those reasons. So I do love that we have that option. I typically just go for the doe foot. That doesn't bother me at all. So this does have a little bit more of an olivey undertone to it, to me anyway. So I don't necessarily love that. However, this is so sheer that when you blend it out, it doesn't really make a difference. So I prefer this for a no makeup day, and I think that is the ideal use for this product. I found myself using this in the summer months when I didn't want to wear much makeup, but we were, say, going out on the boat. So I wanted to look a little bit more perfected and have a little bit more shape to my face. This is what I would go for. And this was perfect for that. This is something that can definitely blend away because it is so sheer, but it does give a really beautiful sculpt to the face. And like I mentioned, it can be perfect for a no makeup day. I do think that's the ideal use for this. This can also act as a really nice base for a powder bronzer if that's what you want to do. It just gives a really beautiful sculpt and is never ever too much. I do want to try mixing this into some foundations that are a little bit too light for me because I think this will really help with that. So I do want to leave this out and try that, but I really didn't find myself reaching for this very often. It's not a bad product by any means. I just didn't find myself reaching for it. So for that reason, I put this at number 12. I like it. It's an innovative product. It's creative. I love the packaging. I love the concept, and it definitely has a place in my collection, but I just didn't find myself reaching for it over some of the others. Coming in at number 10 is from the Sephora collection, and this is the matte bronzer. I really like this. So the packaging is, of course, just very, very simple, very basic packaging. This does have a fragrance to it as well. I can't quite place the fragrance. It's a little bit floral, a little bit rose, but it's not an offensive fragrance. I do have this shade 00 Sun-Kissed Haze, so the lightest one. And I think I forgot to mention in the Makeup by Mario, I have the shade Fair, but I have the shade 00 in this one. So this is the very lightest one, and I just found the shade to be a little bit off. It had almost a little bit more of a yellowish undertone to it, which again is not my preference. So I think that is why I dropped this down to number 10, but it's still an excellent, excellent formula. I think if you're looking for a bronzer that is going to be matte but also not going to break the bank, I do think this is a great option. At number 9, we have a bronzer from RMS Beauty, and this is their Satin Matte Bronzer in the shade Send to Voicemail. So she did launch blushes and bronzers this year, and I really love the blushes as well. And this is what the bronzer looks like. I do think this is a really lovely formula as well. This is very, very buttery. It's also just very easy to blend. It's easy to work with. It's affordable. I do really like this one. I don't love the shade as much. So again, I have the very lightest shade, and I do find this shade is a little bit warmer than I would typically prefer. But otherwise, I think this is a really, really solid, affordable bronzer formula. I think it's absolutely lovely. Again, it's a little warmer than I like, but I do think this is really lovely, and it's definitely one of the best products I've tried from RMS Beauty so far. Coming in at number 8 is from NYX, and this is their Buttermelt Bronzer. I have the shade Buttercup, so this is the lightest one in this range as well. So at first, I wasn't really tempted to pick these up because I don't love the packaging. The packaging does seem a little bit inexpensive to me. You don't get a mirror in here. It is just kind of basic. There is a fragrance here. It's kind of like the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer, but almost a little bit more intense. These are also, I understand, very soft. So I think if you do order these online, there is a possibility that they will break. So just be mindful of that. I actually love this bronzer though. I love this. So this is the first bronzer that I'm mentioning today that has that rosier undertone that I like. This is the absolute best if you love that sort of bronzer trend. So this is definitely bronze, but it does have that more rosy undertone, so it can definitely give you that bronzed look. So one thing I forgot to mention about the Ilia, this one almost seems like a copper to me, which, again, just not what I'm going for. This is an example of a bronzer that has that rosy undertone, but that's done right. So I just look sun-kissed. And this looks so flattering on the skin. It's very buttery and easy to blend, easy to work with. I will say this is very pigmented, so you do want to be careful with it. I understand the blushes in this line are very intensely pigmented, which is why I never tried one of those. But this is just such a beautiful product. This is easily one of my absolute favorite drugstore bronzers of all time. I'm still debating on whether I like this more or less than the Physicians Formula because that has always been my top favorite. But I like this just because of that undertone that it has to it. I find that Physicians Formula has never really messed with their undertones, whereas I feel like NYX was not afraid to go there. This does have that stronger fragrance, but I don't mind that. I kind of like that fragrance, and I just really love this bronzer in general. I think this is an excellent formula. Coming in at number 7 is another liquid bronzer I tried this year, and this is from Saie. This is their Dew Bronze. I have mine in the shade Sand. This I love so much. So like I mentioned, I don't go for a lot of liquid bronzers. That's just not one of my favorite formulas. This does have a doe foot, and this looks more dark and intense than it actually is. When you put this on the face, this blends out like an absolute dream, but doesn't blend away. When I blend this, I feel like it's just sort of melting into the skin and giving me the most natural looking bronzed look. I love this liquid bronzer. The only reason it's ranking lower is because the other products I tried are just so good, and I don't always reach for liquid bronzers. But if I'm going for a liquid product, this is absolutely something I'm going for because this is just so fantastic. This is one of the most user-friendly liquid bronzers I have ever seen. I've always been a little bit more intimidated by liquid and cream bronzers. The Makeup by Mario, not at all intimidated by because it's so sheer. This is not nearly as sheer. This will definitely give you a lot more pigment and structure, but this is going to blend out so beautifully and you don't have to worry about it. It's just always going to look fantastic on the cheeks. Once I tried this formula, I was so tempted to try their blush formula, but a lot of people mentioned the blushes are a different formula. So I haven't tried their liquid blushes yet, but this is absolutely fantastic. Coming in at number 6 is from Haus Labs. This is their Power Sculpt Velvet Bronzer. I picked up the shade Light Level 1. I don't think this one launched in 2024, but that's when I tried it. So I do love the packaging. I do love that it has this sort of rubberized front. I do think that's a nice touch. This one actually has much more of a suede texture to it. It's not really as buttery, but it does have a very suede-like texture. So I do think that always feels a little bit interesting, but this is actually so incredibly easy to work with and use. I think it's such a beautiful bronzer. I reached for this so many times this year, and I do think it's fantastic. I like the tone. I love that it's very neutral, so it's always flattering on my skin as well. I love the packaging. I like the formula. This is a really solid bronzer from Haus Labs. If you've been eyeing this one up, I don't think you'll be disappointed because I think it's a great formula. At number 5, I have perhaps the bougiest formula in this ranking, but this is from Gucci, and this is their bronzing powder. I have shade 1. So this packaging is easily some of the most beautiful in my entire collection. It should be. It's Gucci. The fragrance on this one is quite strong. So that is something to note. If you do not like fragrance, definitely pass on this. You do actually get a little brush in there. It took me a very long time to figure that out. So I did do a video earlier this year talking about the best bronzers for fair skin, because when you have very fair skin, bronzers that are too warm or too orange leaning just look very orange on the skin. That's not to say that some people with fair skin cannot pull off those tones. That's not to say that at all. But for fair skin tones, bronzers that are either neutral or have a more rosier undertone look a little bit more natural and a little bit more flattering on super fair skin because it does give you that more sun-kissed look. So This is one of the bronzers that has that more rosier undertone and looks very, very flattering on fair skin. I love this. This is pigmented, so just keep that in mind. This is a very pigmented bronzer, but the shade of this, the exact tone, is so flattering on my skin tone that I really, really do enjoy this. This is obnoxiously expensive, but sometimes Sephora puts their Gucci products on for half off, usually on a long weekend or something like that, but that is when I snagged this one. So this is very pricey, but the packaging is absolutely stunning. The formula is wonderful. I love that it's matte. I love that it's easy to blend and work with, and I love that rosier undertone. The tone of this is just absolutely perfect. Just be mindful if you don't like fragrance, stay away from this one. Coming in at number 4 is probably one of the only glowy bronzers that I absolutely love. And this is from RMS, and this is their Redimension Hydro Bronzer in the shade Beach Walk Betty. I love this. So like I said, this is actually glowy. Now, I don't hate glowy bronzers. It's just not necessarily my preference. But there is something about the way that RMS did this bronzer. This has that sort of rosy undertone to it, so it works beautifully on my fair skin. But then there is also just something about the tone and the way that they did the glow in this one. It's not glittery. It just gives you that really beautiful sun-kissed look. And it just looks so beautiful and flattering on the skin. I don't know what they did to this. I don't know what they put in it, but this is such a beautiful bronzer. On initial swatch, this looks way too dark and intense, but I promise on fair skin, this is fantastic. I was a little skeptical because I don't necessarily love the Hydra blushes. I do find those too glowy, but enough creators raved about this that I was convinced, and it actually is perfect. This was also in my best bronzers for fair skin video because I really do love this as well. And if you do prefer a glowier option, but you are super fair, I think this is a perfect shade. You don't even need to be super fair. You can have a lighter skin tone as well, and I think you'll really enjoy this. Coming in at number 3 is a bronzer I tried very recently. I haven't even put this in a month-end speed reviews video yet, but this is from Victoria Beckham. So this is the matte bronzing brick. I picked this up as part of her Black Friday sale. She had 20% off. No surprise, this is some of the most beautiful packaging. I love a good tortoiseshell packaging. This is also very heavy, and it does just have a button here to open this up, and inside you get a contour shade and you get a bronzer shade. So the bronzer shade is a little bit warm, but not in an unflattering way. It's very light, so it doesn't pull orange. This contour shade has that rosier undertone to it. I actually like to either just use this one or mix them. Today I mixed them and I really liked how that turned out. I just think this is such a beautiful, easy to wear bronzer. This is one of those that it's pigmented, but it's not too pigmented where you're going to get too much and have to really work to smooth it out. This is one of those that is just very user-friendly and very foolproof, and I feel like it looks so airbrushed and flawless on the skin. I just love how this looks. This is just such a beautiful bronzer. I was eyeing this up for the longest time because of course the packaging, but this is the year that I decided to really go for it and try out Victoria Beckham, and I'm so glad I did. And she actually sells refills for this, so once I'm done with this I can purchase a refill rather than purchasing a whole new compact, which I also really appreciate. This is, like I said, very heavy, and when you do put it down, if you put it near anything magnetic, this will stick. The magnets in here are incredibly strong. But as for the product, I do think it's lovely. I love that I can customize my shade. I love that I can sort of play it up if I really want to go into this contour, and then I can bronze with this. I can mix them together to make another bronzer shade, or I can just use this one. I can do whatever I want, and I love that. I love that I have the option. I love that I can customize, especially depending what time of year it is. I do think this is a fantastic product. Coming in at number 2 is from YSL. This is the All Hours Hyper Bronze, and I have the shade 1. So the packaging on this also super incredibly beautiful. On the inside, we also get this sort of quilted texture to the powder. This is just such a beautiful powder. So this is definitely on the light side. I would say this is a pretty good neutral bronzer. If anything, it does pull a tad warm, but it's really more on the neutral side. It's definitely more of a lightly pigmented powder, so it's meant to be built up. So you're never going to get too much, but you definitely can build it. But the shade of this, the tone, how easy it is to blend, it looks absolutely airbrushed on the skin. I love this bronzer so much, and this was definitely about to be a favorite of mine in my entire collection this year. It still is a favorite in my entire collection, but there is one bronzer that kind of surpassed them all. I love the packaging on this. I love the product. I love the blendability. I love the tone. I love everything about this bronzer. I think it's absolutely stunning. But the bronzer that really just kind of left everybody in the dust this year is from Lancome, and this is the Skin Transforming Bronzer in the shade Fair. So again, we have this sort of tortoiseshell packaging. They did actually release their bronzer line, and they also released some highlighters in the same packaging at the same time. They initially came out with 2 shades of the highlighters, and then I think they've now expanded it to 4 shades. But because they came out with bronzer and highlighter in 2024, I am really hoping in 2025 we get a really beautiful blush range from Lancome in this same type of packaging and format. Lancome really had a special year in 2024, so I'm hoping that we see so much more in 2025. This bronzer though is so fantastic. So first of all, when you first get this bronzer, it has a rose embossment. Mine is gone. It is completely gone. And I do have a really good dip in this bronzer. I think I picked this up in August. I brought it with me on vacation, and I have essentially only used this bronzer since I got it. I did take a bit of a break recently to test out the Victoria Beckham, but I still found that every other day I was swapping back to this one because I love it so much. This is just the best bronzer ever. The tone of this is perfect. The shade of this is absolutely perfect. First of all, Lancome did release a really good shade range, so you're bound to find something that works for you. I have shade 1. This is perfect. It's very similar to the YSL shade. They are both very light. They're both on the buildable side, so you can really go in and you're not going to get too much, but you can build it if that's what you're looking for. This is just the most effortless, easy to work with matte bronzer that has the exact perfect tone. This is everything I've ever dreamed about in a bronzer. I love the packaging. I love everything about this. Like I said, I've already got a really good dip in this, so this is one that I know I'm going to hit pan in this bronzer. I've only had it since August, but I will absolutely hit pan in this because I reach for it all the time, and it sits in my everyday makeup basket. So for that reason, this is absolutely the very best, most favorite bronzer I tried in 2024. So because I mentioned the shades and the tones a lot, I did also do a swatch of every single bronzer that I mentioned in this video. So I went from my favorite to my least favorite. So first I have the Lancome bronzer. You can see right beside it is the YSL, and you can see those shades and those tones are so close. Then we have the Victoria Beckham shade, so you can see the bronzer and then the contour. The contour definitely looks quite a bit deeper, darker. Then we have the RMS, which like I mentioned, looks so deep and intense in a swatch, but on the skin it looks stunning. Then we have the Gucci bronzer, which again has that sort of rosier undertone. It looks a little deeper in swatch, but is so beautiful on the skin. The House Labs has that unique sort of shade to it, but it's definitely very neutral. Then we have the Saie, which also looks pretty deep in swatch, but blends like a dream. Then we have the NYX, which has also that rosier undertone to it. Then we have the RMS Beauty, and this is the one that I mentioned is a little bit warmer for my taste. It also has that sort of yellowy undertone to it. Then we have the Sephora collection, which I also really enjoy. Then there's the Makeup by Mario, which looks far more intense in the swatch than it actually is. It's a very sheer product. Then we have the really strange Ilia cream bronzer, and then the glittery Armani on the very end. So that is the 13 bronzers I tried in 2024. Obviously the Lancome really stole my heart. It's obviously an absolute favorite, but let me know down below, what is your absolute favorite bronzer that you tried in 2024? What's your favorite overall? Let me know your thoughts down below. I just love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!